Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Gerald Tang. I'm the Executive Director of Career Services and Internship Program Office here at Bridgewater State University. We're delighted to have two colleagues here from two really great law schools around the region coming and talking about the topic today, which is our session on Secret to a Successful Graduate School Applications, especially for today's sessions focused on law schools. I'm going to go ahead and get started to have folks introduce themselves without us just doing a formal introductions. I will go ahead and ask each one of you to introduce yourself so that way people can learn directly from you instead of us just reading from your bio and the school profile and background, if that's okay for two of you here. I'm going to start with Tony. If you don't mind, I would love for you to share a bit about Suffolk Law School, perhaps share a bit about your role and obviously the program that you and your colleagues are heavily recruiting for.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tori Barnaskis. I'm the Director of Admission at Suffolk University Law School in Boston. I'm really excited to be here today, especially excited to be here with Melissa. A little bit about Suffolk. We are located, like I said, right in the heart of Boston. We are just a few steps away from the Massachusetts State House. So we're in a really cool location if you are interested in doing an internship in the city, working in the city once you graduate. It's really, really cool where we are. We have over 19 different areas of study that you can focus on while you're here. I'd say some of our big ones are IP, legal innovation and technology, and public interest. Those are kind of our top three. We do have a lot of different programs, and all of them are available either full-time or part-time. So we do have our traditional JD program. We have our accelerated JD program, which essentially shaves a year off of your degree. So 2 years full-time, 3 years part-time. And we do have a hybrid online program. So if you're interested in, maybe going online, you want to live in California for a year, you want to live somewhere else and still attend Suffolk, you can join our hybrid program. And then we do have several different dual degrees as well. I'd say our JD MBA and our JD MPA are two most popular of our dual degrees. And then something really cool that we offer to students from select universities is our first generation college student scholarship. Bridgewater State University is one of the schools that we offer that to. So if you are a first generation college student and you're admitted to Suffolk, you would be guaranteed at least $20,000 in scholarship. If your merit was higher, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about funding later, but if your merit scholarship was to be higher, you would get that one, but you'd be guaranteed at least $20,000 if you were to attend Suffolk. And one of the programs that I really, really like that we offer is our Progress to Success program. That's a peer mentoring program. So 2 weeks before classes begin in August, you would essentially come to campus, learn about the university, kind of learn all those terms that you're going to hear during your first couple weeks of law school that you may have no idea what they mean. Gives you a little bit of a jump start. My favorite part about that is that you're partnered with either 2L, 3L, or 4L. And you're partnered with somebody who has something in common. Maybe you both went to Bridgewater State. Maybe you're both from Connecticut. There's something that you two can relate to, and they'll act as your kind of mentor and guide for your first year, if not 2, 3, maybe 4 years of law school. I've heard really great friendships come out of that program, but it's a really cool opportunity for you to get to know those upperclassmen, especially maybe if you're a first-gen college student, if you're nervous about going to law school. We usually have just over 100 first years participate in that program each year. So it's really, really cool. I won't take up too much of the introduction time. I know we'll talk a lot more about Suffolk and UMass in a little bit, but I will turn it over to Melissa.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. Sorry, I should say, apologize. Definitely we'll touch a bit about the financial aid piece, but Melissa, let you start it from UMass Law. Love to share with us a bit more about programs and opportunity available at your respective institution.
Thank you, and Tori, I'm excited to be here with you as well. Thank you, Gerald, for inviting us, and I look forward to continuing our partnership and working alongside the other folks here that are from BSU. My name is Melissa Costa. I am the Director of Admissions at UMass Law School. We are the only public law school here in Massachusetts. We are proud to have several partnerships, 2 partnerships with Bridgewater State University. We have a 3+3 program agreement with Bridgewater State, where students can participate. If they're eligible they can do 3 years at Bridgewater State and then their fourth year of undergrad becomes their first year of law school. So that's an exciting program that we've established recently with the institution. And we also offer a joint degree program with the Master's in Social Work program that Bridgewater State offers. So it's great to have this conversation with the students, but also to acknowledge that partnership. In terms of what we offer a JD program, both full-time and part-time. The full-time program takes about 3 years to complete. The part-time evening weekend program takes 4 years to complete. And you can accelerate either program by taking some summer courses. The areas of study that we offer, obviously with us being the public law school, we do focus a lot on public interest and government work and preparing students to work in the public sector. But we also have other areas of interest that students can focus on, taking different routes throughout the curriculum. And those areas focus on family law, criminal law, immigration law, business law. Those are kind of the more popular areas of focus. In terms of sorry, I'm just looking at some notes here. We also offer some dual degree programs in addition to that MSW partnership that we have with Bridgewater State. We have a JD MBA and a JD MPP, which is a Master's in Public Policy program that students can take advantage of as well as during their time here at UMass Law. We offer on-campus housing. We are located in Dartmouth. Sorry, I should have specified that earlier. We're located in Dartmouth. We're directly associated with the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. And although we are not on their campus, we have our own campus, which is about 3 miles down the road from their campus. But we do offer on-campus housing for our students at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth campus in the graduate housing area. We have about 120 students living there this year, which is making for a really nice living and learning community for our students. So I always like to highlight that's an opportunity for you as well. But I'm excited to answer some of your questions today and to share some more information about the school.
That's awesome. Thank you, Melissa. And Tari, let's go to you for 1 second. You mentioned a bit about the hybrid programs. Obviously that from my experiences, I've never heard of hybrid law school. Love to kind of hear from you a bit about what hybrid law school is like, and perhaps for students to kind of think about and keep in mind what is the structures like. Is it just online courses and a few residency requirements? Would you mind elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So with our hybrid program, you do need to complete your first 30 credits, which is essentially your 1L curriculum in person. So for a full-time student, that would be your 1L year. For a part-time student, that would be your first 3 semesters. They need to be done in person. In order to then go to the hybrid program, you do need to have a 3.0 GPA or above during those 30 credits. If you fall below that 3.0 GPA, you're not going to be kicked out of law school, but you will be placed back into the fully in-person program. So you wouldn't be eligible to do those online courses. You can do the remaining 54 courses fully online if you wanted to. You could do a mix of online and in-person if you wanted to do like 1 semester fully remote because you're doing an internship in New York City. You could do that. I do always encourage people who may consider the hybrid program to look at the bar requirements of the jurisdiction that they want to practice in. And there are very few states that don't allow you to sit for the bar exam if you've taken over X credits. I know New York is one of them. They don't allow 54 online credits. So you would need to do a few additional in-person credits in order to sit for the New York bar exam. But it is very few states that don't allow that full amount. But again, we kind of put the onus on the student to do that research. If you were to attend Suffolk, maybe you start in the fully in-person program, and after a year you decide that you want to do the hybrid program, you can also apply after you've already enrolled at Suffolk and begun. Again, you have to have that 3.0 GPA, but it does just depend on space. We have 25 students per year in the hybrid program. But it's a really cool opportunity if you know that you may want to go somewhere else after you graduate. You may want to take advantage of an internship in another city or state. But again, it's that first 30 credits in person, and then you can choose to be fully remote. You can be a mix of online and remote. If you decide that you really love the campus, you can be fully in person if you want to. So it really is what you make of the hybrid program.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tari, for For additional information, Melissa, let's go to you for 1 second. You mentioned a bit about the joint program, the dual degree program. Obviously, we have a partnership with UMass Law School for our specific program arrangement, the 3+3, and the others. But you mentioned about the JD-MPP, the JD-MBA. Perhaps from your perspective, what will be advice that you have for students even considering a dual degree programs of some sort? Like, what's the benefit of doing that versus straight into like a simple JD program?
Sure. I mean, if obviously the JD MBA program would be students that are interested in business law that might want to take a deeper dive into the management, the business administration part of working possibly for a corporation, or if they really just had that interest in maybe doing an MBA or a JD, well, this is the opportunity to do both. The Master's in Public Policy focuses on, for students that want to go into legislative work or advocacy work, or they really want to do some of those nuts and bolts of like writing policy or analyzing policy. So it's a great combination to have to really take that deep dive into, public policy and what it entails. The public policy program offers concentrations. So there's an education law policy concentration, a environmental law concentration, and then there's a public management concentration that students can choose from. They don't necessarily have to choose one of those concentrations, but it's one of, those are the 3 tracks that you can take, or you can take a mix of all of them in terms of the elective classes following the core courses. The MPP program is completely online, so it's super flexible for our students that participate in that. And just to note that in order to participate in any of the joint programs, you can only do that after your first year. The American Bar Association, which is the accrediting agency for all the law schools in the country, they require that you take at least 30 credits before you're able to take any credits that would be transferable into your curriculum for the law school. So we always recommend students, you don't necessarily have to decide when you're applying to the law school that you definitely want to do the joint program. Oftentimes students will make that decision during their first year, once they're, kind of going through the motions of their first year, whether or not they want to add that extra curriculum to their studies. And then in terms of time of how much time it would add to their studies, typically the MBA program adds at least 1 semester, but students often will take advantage of the summer offerings in the MBA program, which are offered in person, online, or a hybrid of both. So you do have some options there on how you take those courses, but they offer a lot of 7-week kind of concentrated classes, so students can really kind of chip away at their progress in that program. But both programs will accept credits from each, so you're definitely saving some time and money in taking advantage of both programs.
And obviously, the benefit you're getting two diploma out of the whole experience, or not just 1 degree from your experiences as well. So thank you for sharing the insight on that. Let's stick with you, Melissa, for 1 second. You mentioned about UMass Law as a public interest focused law school, because I think one of the questions that many students might wonder is, how do they decide which law school to go to? Do they focus on like the ranking or the specialty? Like, how may one search for and selecting the type of law school and what their strengths or the unique offering that they emphasize on?
Yeah, that's always a very, the typical answer that you'll get from a lot of attorneys, that is, it depends. It depends on a lot of what you're really focusing on and what you're looking to get out of your law school experience. So things that students more of like on a top level, people are looking at, do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be in a more rural area? Do you want the distractions, or do you want to be able to travel the distractions but still come home and have like a more quiet area to study? Do you want class size is a big thing. Do you want to be in a bigger school, or do you want to be in a smaller school where professors will know your name, that you'll have access to career services, individualized access, which is something that we really pride ourselves in, because we are a smaller school, so we're able to provide a lot of individualized support in terms of academic success, in terms of career services, and then just providing enough opportunities for everyone so that it makes for a more collaborative setting. The most important thing is to find a school that's going to fit what your needs are and what you're trying to get out of your experience in law school. That may be, living in the city and being in downtown, you know, in a big metropolitan area. I know that Suffolk has a wonderful program, and it's in a amazing area, or in terms of finding opportunities in the city. Or, you know, you might think that you're going to be, you know, better served in a smaller community where you're going to make connections with more colleagues and be part of a tighter knit community. So not to say that the students at Suffolk don't, you know, don't have a tight knit community, because I know there's plenty of opportunities there too. And we're not here to compare ourselves to each other, but you know, we do offer different types of programs, and you'll see that across the board at all the law schools in the area. So if you're able to, I encourage folks to visit. If you're not able to visit in person, I encourage folks to call and try to set up a time to talk to a current student and talk to them about their experience at the school, because that'll say a lot to you about, you know, whether or not you think that that's a good fit for you, for your experience and what you're looking for in law school.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa, for the overview. We are not comparing both schools. Both schools are
No.
great. That's why we have them here.
Yes.
But we certainly want to educate all the current students in the room of at least just a little bit more insight, right? How might that work from behind the scenes, from the other side of the table when both Tori and Melissa review application. Speaking of application, I'd love to go to you, Tony, if it's okay. Can you share a bit about what's a typical admissions timeline like for a law school? Like, how should students start to think about and considering law school, and what the whole journey might be like?
Sure. Before I do that, I really just want to echo what Melissa said about trying to talk to a current student. I think that that's so important. You can talk to us as much as you want, but we can only give you so much insight. We can talk to you about what we have to offer and about the application process, but to hear from a current student about what their experience is like really makes a difference if you're interested in law school and helping make a decision about where you want to be. So I just want to say, if you can do that, I highly, highly encourage you to do that. As for the application timeline, you know, for us, we usually see students start to gain interest in like setting up their application, do everything about a year before they want to begin. So summer, say you want to enter in 2025. This summer, 2024, is kind of when we encourage you to really start thinking about where you want to go to law school, what applications you want to be submitting, right? You can apply to 15, 20 different law schools, but you're probably not going to want to spend the time to do that. You're not going to want to spend the money to do that. So really start thinking about where it is you want to submit an application to. Take the LSAT if the school requires it, take the GRE, take the JD Next, whatever test the school accepts. I think the summer/fall is a really good time to do that. This way, in case you do decide that you want to retake it, there's still plenty of time. And again, like every school's deadline is different. So definitely look at the school's deadline that you're interested in. For us, our priority deadline is April 1st. We have a couple other ones as well, but you know, say you're applying for that April 1st deadline. If you take the LSAT in August, plenty of time to take it again if you wanted to do so. If you are applying, for us, within 3 to 5 years of graduating from undergrad, we encourage an academic letter of recommendation. So asking for faculty letters of recommendation early, almost as early as you can, is something that I encourage as well, because faculty get busy, right? You can ask them in September. I've seen letters that don't come through until January, February, when the semester's over, and they can do that over the break. So if you're really trying to hit a deadline, it's really important to connect with the faculty almost as soon as you can. Let them know when it needs to be in by, maybe bump it up by 2 or 3 weeks if you're a little nervous that they're not going to get it in time, to give them some leeway. But definitely, again, just do that as soon as you're able to. What else? For us, I'll talk a little bit about our deadlines. April 1st is our priority deadline, like I mentioned. So if you are interested in the JD program, the JD MBA program, April 1st is when I encourage you to apply by. July 1st is our final deadline, but typically spaces are limited after April 1st. Funds are limited. I wish we had unlimited funds to give our students, but we don't. So the earlier you apply, the more seats are available and the more funds are available. We do have a binding early decision program, and that deadline is December 1st for us. So with that, you are guaranteed full tuition scholarship. But with that, you're guaranteeing that you'll attend Suffolk. You're going to withdraw all other applications. You're not going to submit any new applications. So that's one of our deadlines. And then we have February 1st as a priority deadline for accelerated and hybrid, just because those two programs are a little bit more competitive and spaces are a little bit more limited. But it's not like if you apply March 1st, April 1st, if there's space, you could still be admitted into that program. One thing I also encourage you to do is apply just in general as early as you're able to. When you're confident in your application and when you've reviewed your application and when you're like, this is it, there's nothing that needs to be done with it, it's ready to go. I see sometimes a lot of applications come through where the person thinks that they need to submit it on September 1st. They need to submit it on September 2nd. Like they just have to get it in. And there's a lot of mistakes in it because they wanted to get it in before they actually reviewed it, before they were actually ready to submit. So I encourage you to apply as early as you can once you're ready and confident in your application. I don't know, Melissa, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's wonderful advice. Definitely, you want to be, want to make sure that all of your documents are proofread, that everything is in before, getting your application in on September 1 versus October 1 is not going to make a difference in terms of your application process. We do things a little differently at UMass. We have rolling admission. So we are reviewing applications. We started receiving applications September 15th. Our deadline is June 30th. But we also encourage students to apply, by March or April the latest, because after April 1, the class starts to fill. And so we can't always guarantee that the scholarship funds are going to be as readily available toward the end of the cycle. So while we don't have kind of like, that hard deadline, I would encourage to plan ahead and to be sure to get all your materials in on time so that you can be fully considered for any scholarships that are available to you if you are admitted. The other kind of tip I could give you is that say you're thinking about applying for 2026. You can access LSAC. If you create an account LSAC, you can access all of the applications that are posted this year. The chances of the applications changing, tremendously between now and next year are pretty slim. There might be some additional questions that we might add or remove from the application, but it's a good kind of sense to figure out like what is expected from the application. So if you already kind of have your list of, these are schools that I'm definitely going to be, applying to, check out their applications this year, kind of figure out what they're expecting from you in terms of what your personal statement should be talking about, what, because each application might have a different prompt for their personal statement. So at least you can kind of start putting those thoughts together. Some schools may require 3 letters of recommendation, while others may require 2. So that way to prepare to ask for 3 versus 2 when you're preparing that summer before you apply. So there's some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about where you're going to be applying and putting all of your materials together for your application.
That's awesome. Melissa, thank you for sharing that. And I think both Tori and Melissa for this. And let's peel out a little bit of the curtain, right? Let's just kind of seeing through the admission journey and maybe we can unpack a little bit of some of the question. Before one consider law school, let's say I'm considering law school, but I'm not sure necessarily I'm going to go immediately or I will take some time to work and then go back to school and so forth. What are some of the recommended activity will be an ideal scenario, ideal profile, what you would recommend me to do to try? Do I need to major in certain types of classes? Let's talk a little bit about before getting into law school piece. Melissa, perhaps aside from you, what will be, recommended there's classes that students should take to get immersed themselves into a little bit of that feel of is law school right for me or not? Do you something that you suggest students could consider?
Sure. So most schools, well, I know that Bridgewater State has a pre-law program or a pre-law track that you can take advantage of in terms of taking classes that are specific in building those skills that you need to succeed in law school. But I always tell students that ask me like, oh, which major should I pick? Which classes specifically should I be taking? I always lead by saying that law is in everything, right? Law is in arts, sciences, everything, business. And so what I encourage students to do in their undergrad is to pursue a major that genuinely interests them. So if it is music, then do that, and do it well. That's the biggest point, is to do your best. But you definitely want to be, make sure that you're taking some classes that are building your analytical and writing skills, because those are the 2 main skills that you're going to need to succeed in law school. So make sure that you're taking some classes that are requiring you to do some research, to do some analysis, to write a lot, because you are going to be writing a lot in law school. So you want to be building those skills as you're leading up to the decision on whether or not you apply. So there is no there's no ideal candidate out there, right? And there's nothing that you should be doing that you shouldn't be thinking about opportunities is this going to look good on my application? You should be thinking about what am I genuinely interested in doing and what kinds of programs or internships do I want to be pursuing now as an undergraduate student in the major that I choose. We often get students saying like, oh, do I have to be president of all the student organizations I'm part of? Is that going to look good on my resume? Is that going to look good on my application? Again, you're going to burn yourself out if you put yourself out there and just do everything, right? You really need to be focusing on doing things that interest you and doing them well, because that will shine through on your application. Hopefully
That's
that's
awesome.
helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tori, let's go to you for a second, right? You mentioned about there may be summer program that students can take advantage of before they even considering law school, right? Those pre-law summer program that many law school offers. Does that provide student advantage at all? Or if so, why would a student consider those programs as an option to explore perhaps law school as a pathway or not?
Sure. So I think the summer programs are a little different than ours because it's for like an incoming student versus somebody who's maybe interested in law school. And we do actually have one of those as well. Like if you're thinking about it, it's called Achievers. And I think it's a really great way for you to like you were saying, figure out if you want to go to law school, right? A lot of the programs will go over mock classes, so you could see what an actual class would be like, and they're taught by real faculty. They're not just like someone they bring in for the program. You'll get to meet a lot of people in these programs who went to that law school specifically, and others who maybe went to other law schools. At least with our program, we go to a couple of different firms. We have people come in and speak to the students. And it's really eye-opening. We also do different like financial literacy programs during the summer to give somebody an idea like, can I afford this? How can I pay for this? Before you even apply to law school. So if, a school has that program, I know sometimes you have to pay for them. Sometimes maybe they're in another state and they can be a little bit pricey. If you're able to afford it, I think that it could be a really good opportunity for you to figure out if you want to go to law school, right? Say the program's $2,000. And I know to even myself, like that's a lot of money, right? Like you may not want to drop that kind of money on a program. It's an investment. You could drop $2,000 on the program and decide that maybe you don't want to go to law school, and now you're saving $150,000 down the road. So I think if you can find a program like that, it is a really good opportunity. And even with ours, we've had it for 3 years now, and every year there's that one person who's like, yeah, I'm not going to law school. This was really eye-opening, and this is not what I want to do. And I'm really happy that I'm able to figure this out now before I spend my time and my money going through it. So I know that programs like this exist. BU does one as well. So if you can find a program to do that, definitely apply, take advantage of it. Some of them offer stipends. So this way, you're maybe not able to work during the summer. You can still get some money and be able to afford the bills that you need to pay. But if you can find a program, I think that it's really, really important that you take advantage of that. Again, if you're able to. I know not everybody's able to participate in them, but they can be really eye-opening and kind of just give you an insight into law school, and you have the opportunity to ask those organic questions like, did you like law school? Like, do you like what you're doing now? And you can get real answers from people. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. Tara, let's stay with you for 1 second, right? Now say I'm now wanting to go to law school. Yes, I'm excited. I want to get myself towards the application. The first things obviously is potentially whether or not I need to take the LSAT or any other related graduate entrance exam. From your perspective, how important it is for LSAT? Like, do I take it multiple times? Should I do it like all shot, just prepare myself the best of my ability? Just do it once and don't do it again. Whatever score it is what it is. What's your advice on that from Suffolk law perspective?
It depends. So from our perspective and what we see a lot, if you have Okay, so the LSAT isn't the only factor that we look at in the application, but it is really important. And I will say for us, the LSAT is one of the 2 factors in a merit scholarship, but we can talk more about that later. So it matters for us for merit a lot more than it does for actual admission into law school. Usually if we see someone who has maybe a lower LSAT score, it's well beneath our 25th percentile. Again, not the only factor, but if that's your only score on file, we typically will recommend the applicant take it again, because is that indicative of how you actually do on the LSAT? Did you have like something else on your mind? Was there a family emergency? Were you just really stressed out that day? And maybe if you take it again, you'll be more prepared, like you know what it's going to be like, your expectations are a little bit better going into it a second time. If you take it once and you get like a 170, kudos to you. I probably wouldn't retake it again, no matter where I was applying to law school. I guess there are a few exceptions. But it really depends on the score that you are aiming for. And I know too, sometimes it goes back to merit scholarship, like maybe you're admitted into the law school and you get a $5,000 scholarship. You reach out like, hey, I really was hoping for some more money. Is there anything I can do? Oh, if you retake the LSAT and you get like 2 points higher, we can give you more money, right? So it depends on, I think, what the school's numbers are. And again, every school is different. Some people weigh the LSAT and the GRE a lot more heavily than we do. So I can't speak for every law school, but for us, like maybe take it twice if you have on the lower side. If you're comfortable in your score and you're like, yeah, this was a rock star score, you don't need to take it again. Note that we can see cancellations on your test. So if you have like 5 or 6 canceled scores, we may be a little curious about what those numbers did look like. So I think it may almost be better to not cancel all of those scores and just submit as they are. For us, we will look at the highest LSAT score. We don't average them out when we're reviewing applications. So if you have 6 scores between a 135 and a 155, we'll look at the 155. So definitely keep that in mind as you're going through as well. And we can also see if there's any type of misconduct in your LSAT test. I don't know if applicants know that, but if you get in trouble for like looking at a different screen or using your phone, we can see that too. So just keep that in mind when you're taking the LSAT.
So to sum up, well-prepared LSAT, preparation is essential, obviously. And if you do it maybe twice, maximum 3 times, but don't go 10, 12, how many number of times, that's not recommended. All the law schools do have access to the the back end, the number of trial or attempt that you have for these standardized score. But Melissa, let's get to you. What about GPA and LSAT? Does it? I have high GPA, but I have low LSAT score, or vice versa. Does your school has any sort of perspective on that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a little bit more in terms of the LSAT before we talk about the GPA. So just so you know, every law school has what we call our required disclosures on our website. And it's essentially a document that looks exactly the same. It's an ABA report that'll tell you what the, and you'll find it in other areas of the website, but it'll tell you our last incoming class, what our median LSAT, our median GPA, the 75th and the 25th percentiles as well. Now, I'm going to advise you not to go on to Reddit and talk, read about a law school applications, like talk to us, the professionals, when you have questions. But I know that people will get curious and they'll go read, what should I do? I have this LSAT score. Can I get in, right? Those medians, that's just a number, right? So if you understand what a median is, we have a class of X amount of people. The median means that half of the students in that class were at or above that number and half were at or below. It does not mean that if you don't have that median score or more, that you can't get into the law school. And you'll see that misinformation out there. So it's important for you not to just focus on that score or focus on that GPA if you're off by a 0.03 that you're not going to get into law school, right? In terms of our admission process, we have a faculty-led admissions committee. So the folks that are going to be teaching you in class are the ones that are reading your application. And they pride themselves in taking a holistic approach in reviewing your file. Yes, they are looking at those 2 data points that kind of give you, give us an idea of what your academic abilities are in terms of what your performance was in undergraduate, in your undergraduate studies, but also how you did on that test. We accept the LSAT, the GRE, and the JD Next exam for admission here. So they're taking that as one of the indicators they're looking at in the full picture, but they're also looking at your letters of recommendation pretty seriously, especially if they're coming from faculty members. They take those, those words as they're attesting to your academic ability. So keep that in mind when you're requesting your letter of recommendation, that you're asking from someone that is not going to write you a form letter saying that so-and-so came to class, they were prepared, great. Like, they want to be talking about something that you did, some research project that you did, and attesting to those research abilities and writing abilities that you built in your program. But in terms of the GPA versus the LSAT, yes, you'll read about splitters, right? Schools that when you're applying to, like, if you have a higher LSAT, it'll make up for a lower GPA or vice versa. And yes, that is part of the consideration as well in admission process. But like Tori mentioned, the LSAT is more important for your merit award. We also offer merit awards here that are based on a combination of those two scores. So in order to maximize your opportunities in terms of what kind of merit award you'll be receiving at admission, you can consider taking the LSAT, and you can't go back and redo your undergraduate degree and change your GPA. But the LSAT is something that you can improve on during the process.
That's awesome. Thank you, Melissa. And stay with you for 1 second, right? You talk about the larger application. Perhaps share a bit about what our students really need to consider when they submit all the materials, like essay you mentioned about, is that matter? Recommendation letter, you mentioned about important to have a good recommendation letters. And I know, Tori, you mentioned about having, faculty member who knows you well in their academic performance, talking about that. Perhaps any comments about what tips and advice for these two element essay? Do people really read it? Do they not? I'd love to
Yeah.
kind of demystify that a little bit, if you don't
Sure.
mind.
So in terms of the personal statement, we don't do interviews as part of the application process here at UMass. So it's an opportunity for your voice to come through in the application beyond all the data points that we're collecting in the application itself and then the transcripts that are coming through. So the personal statement really tells this, I mean, ours is open-ended. Tell us, why you want to go to law school. Tell us about yourself and why you want to pursue legal education. So that could come from all kinds of perspectives. So the committee really appreciates that statement, one, to get to know the applicant beyond the transcripts and all of that, the information, but also it's an opportunity for them to analyze your writing skills. So it's important to keep that in mind as you're preparing your statement in submitting that, and having at least one other person read it just for writing style, maybe paragraph formatting, that kind of thing. But they're also looking at your writing sample from whatever standardized test you take, because that's how you write under pressure. So although the writing samples and those tests are never really scored, take them seriously. Don't just say, oh, this isn't scored, I'm just going to write whatever, because they're looking at that for your writing style as well, and whether or not you can write under pressure. So that's another important factor in the application for us at UMass. If you do any other education, so if you say you're applying after you've completed a master's degree, yes, your transcripts from your master's degree are going to be considered for your admission. They're going to be looking at that as, you're able to do graduate level work. But keep in mind that for scholarship consideration, we are only looking at your undergraduate degree GPA, because everyone comes in with that, requirement. So everyone has to be kind of looked at it on the same playing field. So that's another thing that folks don't really know sometimes when they're applying to law school.
That's awesome. Tori, what about you? Anything you want to add to this topic?
So how Melissa mentioned, to have someone proofread it, I usually recommend 2 proofreaders. One can be someone mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, like a close friend. One can be someone, and should be someone, who's not afraid to give you constructive feedback. I think sometimes if you ask a friend or family, I know, like, if I were to ask my mom to read something, she'd be like, Tori, this is the best thing you've ever written. That actually doesn't help me at all. Like, I don't know if there's mistakes in it. I don't know if things make sense as they should be. So having someone close to you, I think, is good. Having someone who's, again, maybe like a faculty member, pre-law advisor, an academic advisor, somebody who's not afraid to be like, this actually doesn't make sense. You should probably try to rework this sentence or this paragraph, and here's how we can do that. I typically encourage students and applicants not to put a school name in the personal statement that they're applying to unless they're only applying to one school. We see sometimes at the end of personal statements, like, that's why I want to go to UMass, and you will get a wonderful education at UMass. However, I am reading your application, Melissa is not. So that kind of shows us that you almost don't pay attention to detail and you didn't proofread your work beforehand. So unless you're really confident in your proofreading skills and you're going to make sure that you're clicking all the right buttons on your application, I usually recommend avoiding a school in your personal statement. It really shouldn't repeat what's on your resume. If you can give us certainly more information and more detail about something that's on your resume, but it shouldn't just re-outline what we already see on your resume. And on an overall application, I'll share one of my little pet peeves. Please, please, please capitalize things when you're applying to law school. Your name, we see people who don't capitalize their names and it drives me nuts. Street address, city, state, like, people don't capitalize that. And it's like, that is my #1 pet peeve. And I'm sure others have similar pet peeves. So that would definitely be my one thing to really pay attention to. I know it's so easy to just quickly type out things and not click that shift button, but if you could click that shift button for Suffolk law, at least, I would be so happy.
That's
I
good
echo
information
that as well.
Absolutely. So, write it in the professional business. Obviously, for student in the room, we are also happy to help in the career services internship office to review some of your materials. If you're applying for, any graduate program, you're looking for someone to give you some opinions on that. Our advisor, our team advisor here, are happy to kind of review some of the content of your materials as well. Not going to be specific to this is what Suffolk Law School is going to look for, or UMass Laws will recommend. We're just going to give you a perspective. Does the flow and the content make sense? You answering the question is needed. But let's go back to you guys for 1 second, right? The students who say, okay, I have a situation, a drop in my grade in between my undergraduate, which obviously some of us have experiences that are, ups and downs, and that's just how we call life, right? Where do they submit that information? Where do they sort of advocate for themselves and say, hey, I may have a dip in my, undergrad experiences in my junior year because I changed my major? Like, where does that information fit into the application itself?
Sure, I can answer that. So you have an opportunity to add addenda to your application. So an addendum that's entitled GPA addendum or LSAT addendum. We encourage applicants to provide that kind of context, because if you think about it, the folks that are reading your file, they're reading hundreds, if not thousands of files, right? And they're looking at your transcript and they might be wondering, oh, what happened here? Like, they had a really tough semester here. You don't necessarily have to go into your personal details of personal life, or, if you had a really tough semester because of something bad that really happened to you. We certainly don't want you to re-traumatize yourself and writing a whole paragraph story about it. But just make a quick note saying, hey, you'll notice that my second semester, my junior year, my grades dipped a bit. I had these challenges, I was, facing some personal challenges or some financial challenge, anything, right? Just kind of some context to add to that. Because the committee will appreciate that, and they won't be sitting there wondering, and making up their own assumptions based on other information you had in your application. Same goes for an LSAT. Like, say you went into the LSAT your first time and you didn't do well. But the second time, obviously the score was higher. If you want to add a note saying, hey, you'll notice my first score was X, and I had some a personal matter that took place that day, and I wasn't able to focus on the test. It's helpful as long as it's truthful, right? Don't make up a story just because you didn't prepare and now you're going to make up a story to present that. It's important to always be truthful. But what I always tell students too when they're preparing this type of addenda is always try to highlight the improvement. So even if you say, hey, you'll see this semester, but hey, look, my last 3 semesters at the school, you'll see that my grades improved, whether it's because I changed my major or whatever, or I was able to overcome the challenges that I was facing. But always end it on a positive, because I think the committee will appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that there was a challenge, that you faced that challenge, and that you were able to overcome it. hopefully that's helpful. And you can
That's
do that
great.
in other situations in your, anytime you feel like you need to add a little bit of context, you have the addendum option to take advantage of in the application.
That's all right. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa, you mentioned about not requiring any interview in through the process. Tori, what about you? Does Suffolk Law have interview options or even requirement?
We do not offer interviews as well through our process. So kind of like how when Melissa was talking about the personal statement, that's really your time to shine because we don't offer interviews. So really anything that you think is important for the committee to know, that's where you should share that information.
That's great. So just for students in the room, there are law schools that are specifically require or have an option for you to request an interview as part of the not in search process, part of the recruitment admissions process. So just to note that there is something that you are also need to be pay close attention to if you're applying for specific law school and their requirement as well. Any other tips for the application material before we move into the most important topic of money?
Just really quick on the resume. We really didn't talk too much about the resume. So, Gerald, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, that your resume shouldn't be listing every single employment that you've had, right? It should be only like the relevance to applying to law school. So what do you think is going to be relevant? I mean, clearly there might be some employment opportunities that you've had throughout your undergraduate career, whether that you'll want to highlight there, and some internship opportunities and, you know, volunteerism. So you really want to make it relevant to the job that you're applying to. In this case, the law, you know, applying as a law student. You're going to have an opportunity in the application to list all of your employment history, all of your internship history. And when you see the word all there, that means all, right? You should be listing everything there. And just so you know why we're collecting that information is that eventually when you graduate from law school and apply for the bar exam, you're going to have to list all of your employment there. So it's important to already get that information on file now because that, you know, when you are applying for the bar, us as a law school, we're going to have to certify that you share that information with us when you entered law school. So it's important to kind of think about that stuff. So you can't really just apply to law school and not prepare, like, you know, on a whim. You're going to have to prepare some information in advance. So it's important to kind of collect your thoughts around that. So just a quick tip on that too.
That's great. Tori, what about you? Any other tips and suggestions and thoughts?
I think really just taking your time with it and proofreading, kind of how Melissa was saying, you need to list everything on your application. I am the #1 hater of having to list everything when it's on the resume. I'm like, why can't you just look at my resume? I feel you, I get you 100%. Take your time with your application. If you need to spend 2 weeks on it, spend 2 weeks on it. Add one employment position, come back the next day, add the next one. Take your time and proofread are kind of my two biggest pieces when you're going through law school and submitting your application.
That's awesome. Thank you. And just a quick recap for folks before we transition to the financial part of it, right? Because this is a big investment also. LSAT, if you are prepared, please take some time to prepare for LSAT or any other related graduate entrance exam that law school require of you. If you do take LSAT or any other exam, try not to take it multiple times. You know, 2 or 3 times is fine, but not 10, 20, 30 times. That's a very expensive investment that we highly discourage you to do. Take some time to work with your faculty members now. If you're thinking about law school, to build some relationship with faculty member who knows you and knows you well and you're interested in the law school, so that if the time in which you are ready to ask them for recommendation, you're not asking them the day before the deadlines or only a couple of weeks beforehand. Give them the content they needed for what's law school, what kinds of interest you're planning to go into so that they can help support your application in a more intentional way. Essay, any personal statements, helpful and important information to showcase who you are to the admission committees, and obviously your most important part for me at least, you know, having your application material, your resume, your credential material to be ready to go so that you have submit something that is meaningful for the admission committee to consider. And last piece of that will be do well academically, right? Having high GPA is always a good thing. So if you are, you know, in the process of continue to improve your grade point average, continue to use resources available around campus to help support you throughout those experiences as well. So those are a couple of things I just want to make sure that we all capture Here, before we jump into it, let's say we are all have all these things ready to go. The next thing is how can I fund my, law school, the 3 more year of expensive price tag that comes along. So you both mentioned briefly about scholarship. Can you elaborate on what scholarship looks like? And Tori, let's start with you. You mentioned about possible even full scholarship. Does that cover everything? Or is it just the tuition piece, but not everything else? Can you share a bit about what might be option to finance from a law student perspective at Suffolk?
Sure. So like I mentioned with our binding early decision program, you are guaranteed that full tuition scholarship, and it is that a full tuition scholarship. So fees you still need to cover, everything like that would still be on your own. Housing, it wouldn't cover any housing fees, food, books, that's all on your own. A lot of times students who are admitted through the binding program are a little confused as to why they still have to pay a $500 deposit when they're, getting this full tuition scholarship. It's because of those additional fees that the university charges for. As I mentioned, we have the first generation college student scholarship. So if you are a first gen college student, you'd be guaranteed $20,000. Now, say your merit scholarship, which is based on your standardized test, most of the times your LSAT and your undergraduate GPA, because like Melissa said, those are two things that everybody has coming into law school. If your merit scholarship would give you $40,000, we're going to give you $40,000. We don't give both scholarships, but we do give whatever is higher because we want you to have the most money that you can have. After your first year of law school, so we have 4 sections typically for our 1Ls. The top 5 students in each section academically receive an additional scholarship from our financial aid office. Our financial aid team works really hard to find additional resources and to notify our students, to notify our prospective students about. I know last year, every week I had to send them students whose permanent state was Rhode Island because they had a scholarship available for students from Rhode Island. So they do work very hard to provide additional funding wherever they can and to notify students about. What else? We do have a lot of our students do the Grad Plus loan. That's a big one that students take out when they're in law school. And Access Lex is a great online scholarship data bank that we typically point students to. It is a little bit of work on your end, right? You need to search for scholarships that you qualify for, you need to submit the application for. But again, that timing, you need to spend time on your application, you need to spend time going through the process. That could give you some additional scholarship funds outside of the institution as well. But really, those are the big ones that we typically see with our incoming students.
Awesome. Melissa, what about you?
So with us being the public law school, we do pride ourselves in offering the lowest tuition rate in the area. So in terms of in-state and out-of-state tuition, we do offer a lower rate in terms of, making it a little bit more affordable, but it's still expensive. And so we're able to kind of assist students at the point of admission with offering a merit award. We've talked about what a merit award is based on a combination of the LSAT and the GPA. Our merit awards can range from anywhere from $1,000 a year to a full ride. They are unconditional, meaning we don't have to maintain a specific GPA throughout your time as a student. As long as you're a student at UMass, you retain your scholarship through your time at the school. We also offer a Commonwealth Fellowship, which is for anyone who's a Massachusetts resident or a graduate of a Massachusetts state school. So if any of our guests today here are from outside of Massachusetts, but you're going to be graduating from a state school, Bridgewater State University, then you would be eligible for this scholarship. And that scholarship, if you have at least a 152 LSAT or the equivalent of the GRE, and have at least a 3.2 undergraduate GPA, you automatically qualify for a $15,000 scholarship during your time at the school. So if you're a full-time student, that's $5,000 per year. Part-time student, they prorate it to about $3,750 a year. The third fellowship that we offer is for those students that are interested in pursuing a career in public interest or government work, right, or nonprofit organizations. So it's the Public Interest Law Fellowship. And so in order to apply to that program, you would apply during your application process. You would add an additional statement to your application that speaks to your public interest experience. So what you've done already in the field. So whether or not you've done some internship, taken advantage of some internship opportunities in the public sector, or you've volunteered, and speak to your interest in continuing that type of work. Because the committee is really looking for students that are already kind of doing that kind of work and want to continue doing that work as an attorney. So if you're admitted into that fellowship, we take about 25 students per year. You get 50% off your tuition and fees while you're a student at UMass. Oh, and to clarify, the full ride, if you are eligible for a full ride merit award, that is that covers tuition and any recurring fees that you have on your bill. So the one-time fees you have to take care of, but the recurring fees are covered. But the public interest law program is wonderful because, you know, you take that, you're part of a fellowship program throughout your time at the school. So you're, there are some requirements that you have to, some commitments you have to make as a public interest law fellow. The main one is once you graduate and pass the bar, you have to commit to at least 4 years of public interest work. And that's a huge umbrella, you're right? It could be working in a nonprofit organization, it could be working in federal or state government, it could be working at the local DA's office as a prosecutor. There is a large range of programs, positions that would qualify you to fulfill that commitment. But while you're a student at UMass, you'll have to attend a certain amount of speaking programs. They bring in wonderful speakers that talk about their experience in public interest law. So it's an opportunity for students to network with other attorneys that are doing the work. And then you have to commit to 200 hours of public interest hours, which are volunteer hours. And they don't necessarily have to be in the legal field. It's just any kind of volunteer work. The students are out there in the community just looking for, you know, opportunities to help the community. So, so there is a little bit of a commitment on that one, but if you're interested in public interest law, it's a great program to be a part of. So that covers our scholarships. And then we have a financial aid office, which is similar to Tori, the financial aid office over at Suffolk. They help you connect with, you know, the process to take out a Graduate Plus loan if you need to. In our case, and I'm sure I'm probably at Suffolk's as well, is they can incorporate cost of living expenses into that Grad Plus loan as well. Not just the tuition and fees that you're paying at the school. But they, you know, will also, you know, guide you, and we have some internal scholarships that are available to students, you know, in year 2 and 3, but then there's that database that they will usually pick out some scholarships they think are helpful to our students, and will reach out to us as well and say, hey, are there any students that are specifically from this area or went to this specific school because we have this great scholarship we want to let them know about. So there are opportunities to gain some additional scholarship money after your first year of law school as well.
That's awesome. Just to confirm that students should file for FAFSA, is that right, as part of the application process? So don't forget about the FAFSA application. Many school uses that for your consideration for other scholarship and other funding opportunity as well. There are external fellowships and scholarship programs available out there, so you can also explore those in external to the law school that you're applying for that can also fund your education as well. So with that said, I know it's about time, so we want to say thank you for both Melissa and Tori for taking the time to share with us insight from your perspective from both UMass Law and Suffolk Law. So in the room, thank you so much for joining us today. I will stop the recording as we speak.